Dave, how you doing?
Am I coming through all right?
Yeah, you're coming through great. How you doing, Dave?
How you doing, man?
Great, great. Thanks for
Let me see
asking.
if I can get video on here if it chops up.
Looks good.
What's going on?
So, Dave, are you at least 18 and are you a believer?
Yes, sir.
And do you agree or disagree with the prompt on the screen?
Well, of course, if I'm a believer, I have to disbelieve that prompt on the screen, which is why I'm here. Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you have to say, and I kind of want to start. I've been following for maybe like an hour now,
Yeah.
and just like ask like who do you think that Jesus is?
Dave, let me check one thing real quick. When you turned your camera on, your audio got kind of funny. Let's try,
Should I? Yeah.
let me see if that
How
fixes it.
how are we doing now?
I think that's good. I think you were just running out of bandwidth and it was doing some funny things to the audio. Not that we don't want to see your face, but we want to hear you for sure.
Am I coming through all right?
I think you're okay right now.
Good.
Awesome. So my claim, Dave, is that Jesus was a liar and a fraud. The claim that he was a liar, there's a lot of places you can go with that. The claim with the fraud is based on the idea that he claimed to be the Messiah and he just simply wasn't the Messiah. Which one of these two topics would you prefer to start with, the lying or the fraud part?
I guess like so maybe fraud. I think they're kind of tied up, right? I mean, would you agree? Like
Yeah.
being a fraud is being a liar in a way, right?
I do agree. Now, it could be true that you're a fraud, but you're an accidental fraud, like you're mistaken. I think that could be the case. In fact, if I was going to put money on it, I would say that is the case with Jesus. I say if there's a real Jesus, he probably thought he was a Messiah, then he just wasn't.
So
That being,
just so we can like make sure we're level set. Do you believe in a historical Christ?
yeah, I do.
Okay. So like you believe Jesus actually lived, and do you believe he was crucified?
I think it was crucified. I've got some doubts as to the exact manner of death, only because the Jews write in the Talmud in Sanhedrin 43a. They wrote about him a couple times in the Talmud, but they really didn't like this guy. But in Sanhedrin 43a, they say that they stoned him and then they hung him up on the wood. But either way, I think we still get to the end point, which is at some point that dude ended up on a piece of wood.
Okay. Okay. So
You know what I mean?
you have a historical view of Christ. Now what would you say about, because I think if we're going the fraud direction, right? Christ, you believe the Gospels were, what is your belief about the Gospels? I know someone called in.
So my belief on the Gospels is that they were written much later. In fact, let me I'll give a little bit of credit to the Bible. You know, a lot of people kind of get upset because the seems like the Gospels were written so much later than the Jesus figure, but I think the reason why this is because everybody in the New Testament time period, Jesus, his followers, Paul, they believed Jesus was coming back imminently, like any day. Says, you know, the hour is near, right? It's at hand. So why do you need to write all this nonsense down? It's not until all of his disciples are getting old that it's clear that they're going to die that they finally write the stuff down. Like, oh, we might not be we might not survive. We actually need to write this stuff down. Then we finally get people writing stuff down. So that being said, what I don't know is how much was written down is authentically from the disciples and how much was added to later, because we have a lot of evidence of the biblical manuscripts being added to later. So it's hard for me to know which I would personally find to be original and which is not original. I kind of lost track of the question though. I forgot the question. What was it, Dave? Dave, I think your connection froze on me.
Can you hear me now?
I got you now. Yep.
Okay, yeah, no, I heard everything you said. So I just want to make sure we're going to be going through biblical text. So I want to know what you thought about, like, did John, was he actually writing about Jesus? Did Jesus say those things? Or do you believe that he said those things? Like, I mean, because a lot of the text I would go to that says, hey, Jesus, you know, actually claimed to be, you're talking to someone about was Jesus the Son of God? And you look at a text like John 1:1, right? Like, you don't? I mean, I know you don't believe that text, but do you believe that John was a disciple of Christ? He actually wrote those things, and it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Right? So, like, I guess, what is your belief about the Gospels? That you just kind of accept some of those things, or not all of them? Because you were kind of pointing at certain texts, like I think John 7 you were pointing at, right?
Mhm.
And I'm curious, like, when you see those texts, like red text, Jesus said this, and you're saying, "Oh, Jesus lied here." Well, like, do you actually believe Jesus lied, or um, that text was actually Jesus speaking? Like, because if you don't believe in the gospel, right, then you can't even really look at that text and say, "Hey, Jesus lied," because you don't believe in the text. Or do you believe in the text?
I think almost the entirety of John is ludicrous. I don't think he said half the stuff he said in the book of John. I think a more accurate depiction of Jesus shows up in the Gospel of Mark. But for this topic, actually, that's not actually the point. My point with this topic is not to say this is original and this isn't original. My point with this topic is, like, with what we do have in the book, like, if I just take the book for what it is, Jesus is clearly a liar and a fraud within this book.
Okay. Okay.
So, I'll give you kind of an example of what I'm talking about. So, in John 13:18 and Psalm 41, we find like this really interesting situation. Let's grab Psalm 41 first, and we're going to do 5 through 9. I don't, I don't know if you have a Bible, but I'm going to read it.
Yeah, I'm catching up to you here. 41, you said?
Yeah, Psalm 41. So Psalm 41 is a psalm of lament. David was quite famous for his psalms of lamentation. And so what we read in this particular lamentation, a part of it at least, he says, "My enemies wonder in malice when I die and my name perish." I'm sorry, when I will die and my name perish. And when they come to see me, they utter empty words, while their hearts gather mischief. When they go out, they tell it abroad. All who hate me whisper together about me. They imagine the worst for me. They think that a deadly thing has fastened on me, that I will not rise again from where I lie. Even my close friend in whom I trust, who ate of my bread, has lifted his heel against me. Now, I'm writing this passage and I'm saying to myself, "Oh, sure, this is just a lament of King David." So the problem I have is Jesus reads this and he's like, "Nope, it's prophetic." John 13:18, when he talks about his betrayal, and singles out one person, he says, "I'm not speaking of all of you. I know whom I've chosen, but it is to fulfill the scriptures. The one who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me." But if you're reading Psalm 41, there's no reason why you would ever read that and believe that that single line is a prophecy about the Messiah. It's just David lamenting.
Right. So, you know, I guess I'm kind of curious where you're going with that, because I would agree with you, right? If a Hebrew of that time, without hearing Christ saying that, wouldn't be like, "Hey, this is about me," right? And I think that is in accordance with the Gospels, right? I think of the road to Emmaus, where Christ goes through the Old Testament scriptures and shows them all things concerning himself, right? So he's going through the Old Testament, opening up things that no one would have been like, "Hey, that's talking about Jesus."
Yeah, because it's
But
not.
when they see it, well, I mean, you and I would disagree on that. I think there are texts in the Psalms that are prophetic. I think there are some that are, the Psalms are poetry, right? They're not meant to be taken literally. And I think you would agree with that. True.
I think some of them are poetry, some of them are not, but a lot of them do contain poetry. But like in Psalm 41, it's the character who's doing the lament can't be the Messiah. It's got to be King David because he's a sinner. It says, "As for me, I said, O Lord, be gracious to me, heal me, for I have sinned against you." That can't be Jesus.
So, what are you referring to here?
What I'm saying is Psalm 41 is clearly a lamentation from a sinful King David, right? Just because there is one line that says,
Right.
"My
Right.
close
Okay.
friend in whom
So
I trusted ate of my bread, lifted his heel against me." Listen, just because it says one thing in here that is reminiscent of something else in the Bible doesn't make it a prophecy.
No, and you know what? I think that I can see what you're saying there, but what Christ can do is he could say this exact line I'm applying here.
No,
Why? Because what's that?
I can do the same thing then. If I can just go into any
Well,
random sentence of any random text and say it's a prophecy about me.
you could, but you're not God.
Well, Jesus isn't God either. So
Yeah, but
you're kind of
that's
putting
what.
the
So
cart
so no
before the
no.
horse. What you're saying is, I'm willing to accept bad exegesis. I'm willing to accept lies because I'm starting with the presupposition that Jesus is God. But that's the cart before the horse. What you
Right.
should
And I would
ask
say
yourself is, can this guy be God while telling me lies, while giving me bad exegesis and telling me that prophecies are prophecies when they're actually not?
okay. So bad exegesis would imply though that it's a wrong interpretation, and
It
I would say
certainly
that
would be.
yeah. So you're coming with a presupposition that God isn't real, there
Nope.
is no God,
Nope.
and that Christ isn't God.
Nope.
So you have a different presupposition than me.
No, my
But
presupposition is that whoever the Messiah is, they have to fulfill actual prophecies and not just any random words on any random page.
right, but you say that, but then like you don't actually believe that there's a Messiah. So your presupposition actually is that there is no Messiah, that there is no God.
No, my
And
presupposition is that the messianic prophecies never got fulfilled.
no, your presupposition actually goes beyond that. It's there's no God.
That's not a presupposition in this debate. This debate is not about whether or not God exists. This debate literally is about whether or not Jesus was the Messiah. I could have this identical debate if I was a Jew.
Okay, so and I guess what I'm saying is I because I believe in the death and resurrection of Christ and that he is God, I believe that Christ can look at this psalm and say, "Hey, this text exactly right here that says that he who ate my bread has lifted up his heel against me is actually I'm applying this to Judas Iscariot."
Yeah, which you would accept if you're already brainwashed to think that this is a prophecy. But
I
I'm
get that.
not. But
I
but
get what you're saying there. I kind of
the
went the other direction
but
from
the
you. Like
but the problem we
I
have
wasn't always
here
a believer.
is you're willing to accept bad readings of a text and I'm not. Like, so what's more likely, that a guy resurrected from the dead that can't actually read the messianic prophecies and we just have to give him the credit, or that there's a guy who claimed to be Messiah, didn't fulfill a single prophecy, and then didn't rise from the dead, but there were some people who thought he did and made up mythologies about him.
Well, you said a lot there. I mean, I don't believe what you said there is true
Like
because I
what?
do believe that Christ died and rose, and I do believe that he fulfilled prophecy.
I don't think he fulfilled even one. Can you find me
Okay.
one that he did?
Yeah, let's go to Isaiah 53. How about
Oh boy, you're gonna have a good time with this one.
that?
Have you read Second Isaiah before?
Have I read what?
Second Isaiah,
What do you when you say second Isaiah? What do you mean?
chapter 40 to 55.
The second half.
There's three parts. There's first Isaiah, second Isaiah, third Isaiah, also known as Deutero and Trito Isaiah.
You know, I know that I think it's what it's like in like 40 41 maybe it's sections off. It's kind of got like a historical interlude.
Yeah, so what happens in chapter 40 to chapter 55 is the entire topic changes. The first part of the book is about the Assyrian captivity, with the exception of what I would say is chapter 14. Most scholars think chapter 14 is misplaced. The second half and the third, or the second portion and third portion are about the Babylonian captivity, so about 200 years later, which is why most scholars attribute this to a completely different author. It's not important right now. What's important right now is that chapter 40 and beyond are an entirely different theme than the first portion of Isaiah. And the theme of this portion is the Babylonian captivity. You went into Babylon, you've paid for your sins, you've paid double for your sins. And now I'm coming to free you from captivity. And when I free you from captivity, it's going to be so awesome that all the nations will see, this glorious thing. So,
Okay.
um, let me read you a couple passages, and I'm going to make a case that Jesus is not the fulfillment of Isaiah 53, that it's indeed the righteous remnant of Israel, you're going to complain because you don't see how Israel could fulfill it, and then I'm going to explain to you why Isaiah says it's Isaiah, and then we'll move on to a different prophecy because you'll agree to disagree. So in Isaiah 41, 8 through 9, he says, "But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I've chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend, you who I took from the ends of the earth and called you from its furthest corners, saying to you, you are my servant." Okay, so already in the opening of second Isaiah, we've got an identification of the servant. And who is the identification of the servant?
Israel.
Nailed it. And
But
then
I would say that that is not consistent throughout every single chapter in Isaiah. And I think that I'd be curious what you would say about would you say all of the servant psalms, all of the songs in Isaiah that are about the servant are all about Israel? Would you say that's true?
yeah, the servant songs are about Israel. There's one reference in chapter 49 to the prophet himself, and there's one other reference prior to that that's clearly about King Cyrus. We can address those when we get there. Let's keep reading the text though. In chapter 43, verse 10 says, "You are my witnesses," says the Lord, "and my servant whom I've chosen." So that's Israel, right?
Well, scholars would debate that. I would say that there's two views. One is that it's Israel here, and the other is it's Christ.
Witnesses is plural.
Right, but it says and my servant,
Yeah.
and my
Uh-huh.
servant. So you are my witnesses and my servant whom
Yeah.
I have chosen. So
Uh-huh.
talking to two different groups there. Honestly,
Two
I'll
different
say this right
groups.
now.
You mean, how about a multiplicity of people?
Okay, it's
The Israelites
addressing
were God's witnesses. That's why they're plural.
right, and then it says and my servant. So are you saying
Yes.
that? Well, my would be singular here, right?
No. You
My
are my
servant.
witnesses and
Wouldn't
my
you say and
servant.
my servants?
Yeah.
You'd
No,
say plural servants, right?
no. The
But
servant is the personification of Israel. Israel is a group of people, and the servant is a singular entity, a metaphor for what Israel is. Just like in Exodus, he says that Israel is my firstborn son. Well, obviously, Israel's not a child, it's a personification of a people group into a single person.
I'm with you. I think that there are biblical, Bible believing scholars who would say that this is talking about Israel here. I'm just saying that, hey, I wouldn't accept the premise that what you're saying is that because it's right here talking about Israel, which I could agree with, that doesn't mean that Isaiah 53 is talking about Israel. And I think you'd
Well,
have a hard
there's
time making that
well,
because
well,
we
Dave,
have text that's talking about a single person.
I know
Right.
we're
So,
covering that right now. Don't worry.
okay.
So a single servant is in fact more than one people. It's a nation. We're doing this right now. You're my witnesses in the plural and my servant in the singular. Okay, that's what's happening. 44, it says, "Hear now, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I've chosen. Thus saith the Lord who made you, who formed you in the womb, and will help you. Do not fear, O Jacob, my servant." It's the nation of Israel. All right. Then 44:21, "Remember these things, O Jacob and Israel, for you are my servant." So Jacob and Israel is the servant in the singular. So a multiplicity of people as a single servant. 45:4, "For the sake of my servant Jacob and Israel my chosen." Easy enough. And this is my favorite one. Now we're getting close to the climax of second Isaiah. He says, "Go out from Babylon, flee from Chaldea, declare this with a shout of joy, proclaim it, send it forth to the ends of the earth, says the Lord has redeemed his servant Jacob." So I'm reading the text in context where God is repeatedly saying over and over again, "My servant Israel, my servant Jacob, I am about to redeem you. And your enemies are going to shit bricks. It's going to be awesome." So when I get to chapter 52, when I get to chapter 53, and
Hmm.
God continues talking about the thing he had been talking about for the last 10 chapters, I don't see why I would interpret this as being about anybody but Israel. What would be a good contextual reason to do that?
So when I look at Isaiah 53, where it says, "He was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquity.
Yeah,
The
Israel.
chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his
Uh-huh.
stripes we are healed."
Uh-huh.
Okay, how can you say that's about Israel right there?
All right, so did you hear my question, Dave?
Yeah, yeah, I heard the premise. Look, I can give you that and say, hey, that's talking about Israel, but that doesn't mean that all of the text saying servant here is talking about Israel.
But my question is there a contextual reason why I would not interpret this chapter as about the nation of Israel when God has told me so many times prior that it's the nation of Israel that's going to suffer and then be exalted?
Yes, because the text in Isaiah 53 is clearly talking about a person,
Why? Why would you say that?
because it says he was bruised for our
The
iniquities,
servant.
servant Jesus.
Yeah, no, not Jesus, the servant Israel.
Yeah,
We
how is
we
that
just
true for okay, so
we
then
just mentioned
no,
it like
help
8
me here.
times.
Help
This
me apply this text
the
to
servant
Israel.
is Israel.
Okay, so apply this text to Israel, and how does it make any sense?
Okay, we'll start from the beginning. We're going to start in 52, and we're going to walk through the context, and I'll explain why it's about the nation of Israel. Also, because there's not a single passage in the entire Old Testament that talks about a suffering Messiah, and there are dozens that talk about a suffering Israel. So in 52, we're getting the context. God is now ready to redeem his people. He says, "Depart, depart." Actually, we'll start in verse 10. In fact, we even start in verse 9. He says, "Break forth, shout together for joy, you ruins of Jerusalem, for the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem." Okay, so the setting right now is God is talking to the Israelites in captivity and to those back in Jerusalem and said, "Hey, it's time for joy. God has finally redeemed his people." It says, "The Lord has bared his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God." Now, prior in the book of Isaiah, second Isaiah explicitly, he tells you over and over again what it means when the Lord bears his holy arm. He says he's going to free Israel from the captivity using his mighty and outstretched arm, just like he says with the Exodus, right? When he bears his holy arm, this is a reference to freeing his people from captivity, which is why the very next verse says, "Depart, depart, go out from there, touch no unclean thing, go out from the midst of it, and purify yourselves, you who carry the vessels of the Lord. For you shall not go out in haste, and you shall not go out in flight, for the Lord your God, I'm sorry, the Lord will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard." So he's kind of echoing the Exodus. Remember, in Exodus they had to go out in haste. That's why they made the unleavened bread and so on and so forth. So he's saying this time you don't even have to go out in haste. God's going before you, and he'll be your rear guard. He'll take care of you, right? So now, like I'm reading this in context, right? The entire second Isaiah has been building up to this moment. God saying, "I'm going to free you," and inching closer and closer to that goal, right?
Okay.
And then the very next line after God says, "I'm going to free you," he says, "See, my servant shall prosper. He shall be exalted and lifted up. He shall be very high." So now we're back to talking about Israel being exalted again. "Just as there were many who were astonished at him, so marred was his appearance beyond human semblance, his form beyond that of mortals. So he shall startle many nations." This is the important part. "Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which they had not, I'm sorry, for that which had not been told to them, they shall see, and that which they had not heard, they shall contemplate." And this makes sense because God says he's going to use Israel as a light to the nations, a covenant to the people, and that the kings, the foreigners, the kings are going to see the vindication of Israel and come running to them.
Hmm.
And that's why the ending of verse 15 is very important because he says, "For that which had not been told to them, they shall see." The them are the nations that were holding them captive because they don't have the word of Yahweh. They don't have the prophets, right? They didn't receive any words from Yahweh about this. And it says, "That which they had not heard, they shall contemplate." So he's saying, listen, these people, these nations, they that are holding Israel captive, they didn't know what is about to happen. They have no idea what's about to happen. And then the very next line is a personification of the nations contemplating, right? It says, "That which they had not heard, they shall contemplate." Very next line, "Who has believed what we have heard? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground." So I'm reading this, I'm saying, oh, this is a personification of the nation saying, oh, Now that I've seen what Yahweh has done, holy shit, who would believe this? This is crazy. And then it says that they're like a root out of dry ground, referring to, Israel's situation, right?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Isaiah says later in chapter 60, I believe, he says that God says to Isaiah that Israel is the root that I planted, right? So I'm reading this and saying, yes, Israel is the root out of dry ground. Isaiah tells you, or whoever wrote Isaiah tells you that Israel is the root. So now I'm already in 53 and I'm reading this, and I still, at this point, I can't find a single reason to not read this about Israel yet.
Okay. So, I think obviously there's an exegetical reason you come to that conclusion.
Hmm.
And I see what you're doing. You're leading up to it, and I get that. Now, if you look at 53,
Hmm.
could you see how there could be a suffering messianic prophecy in here? Or are you just like,
Mm-mm.
no, there's no possible way. It's just impossible.
There's no Messiah mentioned anywhere here. The only Messiah ever mentioned in Isaiah is King Cyrus. That's it. If this was a messianic prophecy, you've got two problems.
Really,
One,
that's interesting. I don't know. Wait. I kind of want to probe a little bit there, like why you've come to that conclusion. So you don't. So let's maybe let's look at Isaiah 9:6, right? It's a very famous, well-known passage, right? So
no,
what would you say
uh,
about Isaiah
the
9:6?
the only Messiah in second Isaiah, if I didn't say second, I meant to say second. The only Messiah mentioned in second Isaiah is King Cyrus.
Okay, so I would proposition that in Isaiah 9:6 that we're looking at the same figure here
Oh,
as
I
in
don't think
Isaiah
so.
9:6.
I think Isaiah, well, first of all, I don't think they're the same author, but even if they were, I think Isaiah 9 is about Hezekiah because
Oh, really?
it's an actual king. Yeah. So
Oh, that's interesting because you wouldn't attribute those things. That would be blasphemous, actually, right?
no, the
Okay,
Messiah
let's read
is
this.
just
Let's read the nine.
the
Let's
word
read the nine
Messiah means
six.
anointed one. The king was anointed. It's not
Right.
blasphemy. Okay. So
No, let's read 9:6. Right.
the beginning of chapter 9 starts out with a prophecy just post the invasion by the Assyrians. In fact, this is when this was written. This was written in a time period in which the Assyrian powers already came in, already defeated the northern tribes of Israel, and they got pushed back. And then their kingdom went off and to go fight other battles, and Israel had a little bit of rest for a little while. So this
Yep.
prophecy comes at a period before the Babylonian invasion, after the initial Assyrian invasion, when there's a little bit of breathing room. And it says, "But there will be no gloom for those who are in anguish. In the former time, he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali." These are the two groups of Israelites that are northernmost, except for the tribe of Dan. These two are right up at the north where the invasion of the Assyrians came in. Theoretically, the tribe of Dan was already in an alliance with the Assyrians, depending on how you read it. So he's saying, listen, these northern tribes, they got their asses kicked. It's okay. Things are changing. But he says, in the latter time, they would be made glorious, the way of the sea and the land beyond the Jordan, a Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them a light has shined. So this is just so we're aware. This is past tense. That this part of the text is past tense. He's talking about what has happened with the drawback of the Assyrian troops. And then he talks about how they're going to be victorious in war. It says, "For the boots of the trampling warriors and all the garments rolled in blood shall be burned as fuel for the fire." Or why is this the case? Why is this the case? He says, "Because a child has been born for us, a son given to us." Both of these words, born and given, so this is yulad in the Hebrew, is past tense. The child has been born. That's why it says has been born. This is not a prophecy. This part is not a prophecy for the future. This is a prophecy about a child who's literally already been born. And then he says, authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And if you know anything about enthronement prophecies, these are not names that are describing the king. These are theophoric names describing the God of the king. We see the same thing in the other ancient Near Eastern literature. We see the same thing in the Egyptian enthronement prophecies.
Yeah, I'd reject that, but okay.
Yeah, you can reject the
The
scholarship.
the
That's
text
fine.
doesn't say that though, right? It says his name will be called.
Yes, exactly, because the name Hezekiah means mighty Yahweh or mighty God. That's literally the name of Hezekiah. But when a king became enthroned, he took on theophoric names. Obviously, there's not four different names for the king. This is a standard practice to give 4 to 5 theophoric names to whatever king was taking the throne, which is clear in verse 7. Great will be his authority. There shall be endless peace for the throne of King David and for his kingdom. But there was not, first of all, Jesus was never a king. He never sat on King David's throne, and he never brought peace to the kingdom of King David. It says he will establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness. He didn't do that. He was never a king.
Who was not a king?
Jesus was never a king.
Jesus is the only king. He's the King of Kings and the
He's
Lord of
literally
Lords.
not. Give me one
Yeah,
Bible passage where he was ever on the throne of King David.
what's that?
Show me one Bible passage where he ever sat on the throne of King David in Israel.
He's at the right hand of the Father right now. He's in heaven. He reigns from heaven.
The throne of King David is
Right.
in Israel.
Okay, but would you there's metaphorical language and then there's literal language. So did Jesus come as a humble servant? Yes, he did. But is he also described in Revelation as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? Yes, he is.
But
So
that's
he
adorable
is
if he comes back in Revelation and sits on the throne, but he's never been on it yet. Until he sits on that throne, he's not a king.
right, but he ascended to the right hand of God.
You believe that? I don't. So this is the problem you have. Jesus has to fulfill this prophecy by being a king. He must be
Right.
sitting on the throne of King David. That's what it means to be a king.
And I would say that he is the only one who actually ever fulfilled this prophecy.
But he didn't if he didn't
Because
sit on the throne.
yeah, I know, I get what you're saying, like because you are taking it to be a literal throne, but when
Yeah,
Jesus comes, he says the kingdom of God is at hand, and he's talking about a heavenly kingdom. It's not an earthly kingdom.
but
He's talking about a heaven.
it doesn't matter what he says. If he says that it's not the throne of King David, then he's a liar. He's a liar and a
No,
fraud, like we've been pointing out, because every time the Old Testament talks about the actual Messiah, which the New Testament for some reason ignores, it's an actual king living in actual Israel, sitting on an actual throne of King David. Go
but
to
who when Jesus says, "Who do men say that I am?"
It doesn't matter what he said. I'm telling you what God said.
No,
So I just want to make sure, David, you understand where I'm coming from, right? I'm
right.
looking at the Bible and I'm saying the God of the Old Testament said this, right? And I'm saying, okay, if the New Testament is true, it has to align with the God of the Old Testament says. You're going backward. You're saying, I'm starting with the New Testament. And I'll twist every word in the Old Testament to mean whatever it needs to mean, just so I don't have to give up my New Testament. But that's putting the cart before the horse because
Well,
we
if you
have
look at
clear
it,
messianic passages in the Old Testament. Would you like to read one with me?
okay. Can I respond to that though first?
Hmm.
Okay, so you're reading the text linearly in terms of history. Okay. And I would say that if Jesus said something in the New Testament, and I believe that Jesus is who he says he is, that I also have to look at Old Testament scripture with exegetical lens that says, hey, Jesus said this. I need to look at this other scripture and see if it comports with one another. And I get what you're saying is like, hey, this happened first and this happened later. But what you're saying is if Jesus, so when he has Peter, he says, "Who do men say that I am?" And Peter says, "Right, I am the." They say that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, right? So, did Jesus claim to be the Christ? Do you believe that?
I think Jesus did claim to be the Christ, but none of that's actually relevant. And I'll tell you what, I don't accept the claims that we have to interpret the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament for the same reason that you wouldn't accept the claim that we need to interpret the New Testament through the lens of the Book of Mormon, right? So the Book of Mormon is doing the same thing you're doing. They're starting at Joseph Smith, and then they're reading Joseph Smith back into the text. You're starting at Jesus, and then you're reading Jesus back into the text. So if you don't let the Mormons do it, then you can't do it for Christianity either. You have to start with the Old
Well,
Testament and read that, and then ask yourself, did this actually happen?
well,
So
I
that's what
mean,
we're doing right now. We're trying to read the
okay,
text.
okay,
I'm
and that's fair. That's fair. I understand that, but don't compare this. Don't compare historical Christianity to Mormonism
It's
because.
literally identical.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Christianity is a failed apocalyptic cult based on Judaism, and Mormonism is another cult based on Christianity. So it's completely analogous. In fact, the Jews joke that God gave the Christians Mormons so they knew what it was like for the Jews to get Christians. So let's read an actual messianic prophecy from Ezekiel. It says, "My servant David shall be king over them." This is chapter 37. "My servant David shall be king over them. They shall have one shepherd. They shall follow my ordinances and be careful to observe my statutes. They shall live in the land that I gave to my servant Jacob, in which your ancestors lived. They and their children's children will live there forever. And my servant David will be their prince forever." So the Messiah is supposed to be on the throne in Israel.
And so let's okay, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. He has to be on the throne of Israel. Now, what do Christians believe about who Christ is? It is that Jesus did fulfill that.
We
He's
didn't,
at the right hand of God, and he is going to come back, and he is going to create a new heavens and a new earth and sit on the throne in New Jerusalem.
but he didn't do it.
That's
See, that's the difference. See, you're saying, well, he's going to do it later, but if he's going to do it later, that means he didn't do it. And if he didn't do it, that means it's not fulfilled. So until he comes back and defeats all of Israel's enemies and sits on that throne, he is not the Messiah.
see, I don't agree with that
But then
because
you can't show me a single thing he actually fulfilled. The best you have is he rose from the dead, theoretically, and therefore I just believe whatever he says. You
well,
can't
I mean,
show me in the actual Hebrew Bible where he fulfilled anything.
okay, so what you're saying about the resurrection being that important, I agree with. Right? I mean, if I didn't believe in the resurrection, I wouldn't be a Christian.
But why do you believe in Jesus' resurrection, but you don't believe in the resurrection of Alcestis or Zalmoxis or Aristeus? Like Jesus' resurrection, or like the resurrection of Nero, like there's literally hundreds of resurrections from this time period. Like you just pick this one to believe in?
Well, I mean, do you want the like? There's an academic answer which I came to later, but I was an atheist for most of my life. I'm 33 now, and I met the Lord a few years ago, and I started reading the text, and I really believe that Jesus was who he says he was, and that he died for my sins, and then he rose from the dead, according to the Scripture. Now, I didn't get to the end of the Gospels, but once I believed that, I I really just started reading all of the scriptures, and I believe that they are logically consistent. I know that you don't because you have a lens that is that Jesus is a liar.
Well, I know he's a
But
liar. Because he says that he fulfilled things that he never fulfilled. He says that he's Messiah, but he didn't fulfill a single prophecy. Like he explicitly lies on King David when he quotes Psalm 110 in Matthew 22. He explicitly misquotes and misrepresents Isaiah 61 in Luke chapter 4
see, Jesus can take a piece of the Psalms and apply it to a
and
situation
lie about it.
because no, he can take a verse like that one we looked at in the was it Psalm 40 44 we were looking at?
Psalm 41.
Psalm 41, he could take verse 9 out of there, and he could say, this is applying to this situation.
No, he can't.
Judas the betrayer.
No.
Yeah, well, no, I mean,
No, he
if your
literally can't, Dave,
conclusion
because
is that,
so my conclusion is easy. That a prophecy is a prophecy. I don't care if you think a dude rose from the dead. You can't tell me that something's not a prophecy is a prophecy when we've got literally a third of the Bible is prophetic. Just look at the amount of prophetic. I'll show it to you. Hold on. I'm just gonna sandwich real quick the amount of prophecy in, and my book even includes the apocrypha. I even got extra books in here. Okay, so here's the beginning. 1 second, almost there. Okay, I've got this much material in my Bible. A bunch of this is apocrypha. That's literally just prophecy. All of this is just prophecy. All Jesus had to do was go to these books of prophecies and say, "Hey, these prophecies said that something's going to happen, and I did it." Not once does that happen.
right. And, I think that your conclusion is that it didn't, but when
I
I
know it
read a
didn't.
text like Isaiah 53, and I see that he was bruised
So
and
what?
chastised, what? for our sins, and the wrath of Almighty God was laid on him.
But it wasn't. That's a
That's
adorable
exactly what happened.
metaphor, but it wasn't the case. No, because the passage is originally referring to the nation of Israel. Listen, a guy that gets suffered and killed by the Romans could be anybody. Simon Bar Kokhba fits that better than Jesus. Simon Bar Kokhba was an actual leader. He was an actual prince in Israel. We've got a period of about 3.5 years where they minted coins with his name and face on them, calling him the Prince of Israel before the Romans killed him. Well, why wouldn't you say he's the fulfillment then?
Well, well, I mean, there's multiple reasons. One is the apostles. One
So what?
is, well, I mean, would you die for a lie? Would you
You
die
die
for something?
if you're deceived, yes.
Okay, so how? Tell me about how you could deceive hundreds of people to die for a false Christ.
That's not even hard. In fact, if you read the ancient texts like Tacitus and Suetonius and others, there were so many Nero imposters pretending to be the resurrected Nero that people were literally starting Nero cults. And then there was one imposter that was so successful, he convinced the Parthian army to go to war against Rome. Like 20,000 Parthians picked up
No,
arms
but
and
that's
marched into
distinct
Rome
here.
with the resurrected Nero, thinking it was the resurrected Nero, leading them into battle, only to get their asses handed to them.
I'm talking about something else, not that. I'm saying that if you walked literally with a man and you knew that he wasn't Jesus, would you die for that?
They didn't. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They didn't even recognize it. If you just read the New Testament, like when he appears to people, they don't even recognize his ass. Mary thinks he's a gardener. And then when he shows up to others, they don't recognize him at first either. These are hallmark signs of an imposter. And then if you just read like the Olivet Discourse in the book of Mark during the Olivet Discourse, he tells you that people are going to come and impersonate him. It's almost like the book was written after the fact, knowing that Jesus impersonators were running around.
Yeah, I mean, I like, do I believe in historical Christian evidence that the apostles were persecuted and murdered who were eyewitnesses of Christ? Like, yeah, I do.
Why? Why would you believe that? It's not even recorded.
That-
You've got the death of two of them theoretically in the Bible. You've got one of them told by Josephus, and the rest of them come hundreds of years later. Like the stories that tell the death of like the other disciples. Like you've probably heard of the famous
That's
passage of
Austin's Book of
Peter
Martyrs.
be it was that's 1,500 years later. So the death of Peter being upside down on a cross, like such a famous story, everyone knows it, right? In the
Hmm.
same book that records that story, it says that a dog was empowered by the Holy Spirit to give a speech. It says that a baby nursing at his mother's breast took up words and gave a speech, and that Simon Magus and Peter got into a wizard's duel,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
Simon Magus was
like,
flying.
I don't take, you know this, like, Christians don't take that to be canon. Like, that's not canon.
But these are the texts that we use to talk about the deaths of the disciples. Like the same text that talks about flying men and talking dogs are the same ones that record how the disciples died.
Well, you're like, you could point to those texts, but they're not the only text, right? I would say that Luke was a first class historian, and he recorded the death of James, and
That's
we
what I
also have
said.
recorded, yeah, the death of Paul, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, Paul's death is not recorded. It's presumed that he died in prison. I don't know if anyone really knows. I personally believe he died in prison. But there's some debate to be had there. So James, the son of Zebedee, is the one that gets killed in the book of Acts. James, the son of Joseph, perhaps the brother of Jesus, is the one theoretically that gets killed in Antiquities of the Jews. We don't hear about any other deaths other than Stephen, but Stephen technically wasn't one of the core disciples. So Stephen in Acts 7 gets executed, right? But we have no idea, whether or not he was like a core disciple. But that being said, none of that's relevant. So like the reality is lots of people in the ancient world were willing to give their lives for like these mystery cults and these so-called resurrection occults.
Okay, I mean that like that could be true, but I'm more taking the. I'm not talking about those instances. I don't know about what you're talking about there. Like that might be true. People do crazy stuff. I'm talking about people that were eyewitnesses of Christ
Yeah,
dying for this.
I know.
Yeah,
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 eyewitnesses of the
eyewitnesses.
resurrected
Yes.
Nero went to war on his behalf.
And what is your manuscript evidence for that?
Yeah, I can show you. It's written in a number of different manuscripts. I'm going to grab you the historians real quick. All right, so we read about it. I think a clear one in Cassius Dio in Roman Histories. He says, in his reign, during Titus's reign, the false Nero appeared, who was an Asiatic named Terentius Maximus. He resembled Nero both in appearance and in voice, for he too sang with the accompaniment of the lyre, which Nero was known for. He gained a few followers in Asia, and in his advance into the Euphrates, attached a far greater number, and finally sought refuge with Artabanus, the Parthian leader, who, because of his anger against Titus, both received him and set about making preparations to restore him to Rome. So the leader of the Parthians believed that this was in fact Nero and was going to restore him to the throne. And then we read in Tacitus and Suetonius how that actually happened. It says that they went to war. They actually went to war with the Romans and then obviously got their asses handed them.
I mean, I obviously can't respond to that. That's like not to me. It's a neither here nor there because you know these they weren't eyewitnesses to Christ. Like
They were eyewitnesses of the resurrected Nero. That's what I keep trying to tell you. So okay, let me give you some background on Nero. Okay, so Nero was known for like three things. One was the dude was always fucking gone. He was always off in Parthia doing plays and
but how do
dramas
you
and making
wait?
music
Just one sec. Can I ask you a question? Because we're talking about this. How do you know that?
because they wrote about it. So we've got
Right. So
tons of documents the from the ancient sources, Tacitus, Cassius Dio, Suetonius.
not as many as the New Testament manuscripts though.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
No, there's
So,
far more New Testament manuscripts
well,
than.
the number of manuscripts is irrelevant. The bulk of New Testament manuscripts come from the medieval period. Like very few of them come within even 100 or 200 years of Jesus' lifetime. We've got one fragment, P52, that's like 100 years maybe after Jesus already died, and it's like the size of a business card.
Okay, so I mean, like historical reliability though.
Yeah, I don't think there is historical reliability. In fact,
But
it says in the
you're
Gospels
citing
that Jesus was
you're citing
born
stuff about
during the reign
Nero.
of Herod, and Herod died in 4 BCE. Luke says that Jesus was born in 6 CE during the census of Quirinius. They're off by 10 years.
Bro, but help me out understand this. How can you cite literature about Nero and say it's reliable when you would reject New Testament manuscripts as being reliable? For example, let's say the Book of Acts, being a historical book, a real historical document, but you'll say that that can't be true. But hey, my other book here about from Tacitus about Nero, citing something about Nero, this is true.
No,
Like,
I
how do you know what you're even saying right now is
Uh,
true?
I think they're both true in that they're telling histories, and they're both false when they add mythology to the history telling. So Herodotus does this, Tacitus does this, Suetonius does this, or they tell stories that seem to actually happen in history, and then they add mythological stuff to it. Like if you read Tacitus and Suetonius, they claim that Vespasian, Emperor Vespasian, healed a blind man by spitting in his eyes and healed another man who had a lame leg by using the power of Serapis. Obviously, I don't believe that the power of Serapis compelled Vespasian to heal anybody. We've got tons of healing miracles told by the Roman historians by the power of Asclepius. Obviously, I don't believe that Asclepius was healing anybody. But what I'm saying is, just as reliable as you think the New Testament manuscripts are, we also have the Roman histories. The Roman histories do the same thing as the New Testament documents, the New Testament Gospels. They're purporting to tell history and adding mythological stories on top of it.
Okay, so you're saying this is like, hey, this might be true. This might be true. What you're talking about right now in terms of Nero, right? A history of Nero.
No, no, no. I don't think Nero rose from the dead. What I'm saying is the New Testament manuscripts, right, are doing the same thing that Roman histories and biographers were doing. They're trying to tell history and adding mythology on top of it. Certainly, if you've read Life of the 12 Caesars, you don't believe that 6 of them ascended into heaven and became gods. But that's part of the histories. They're adding mythology to their histories because to them, the mythology is true. To everyone else, it's not. I'm saying the same way I reject the mythology in the Roman histories, I also reject the mythology in the Christian history.
Right. Okay.
Right. I reject just one more mythology than you because you reject all the Roman mythologies, and the Roman mythologies read just like the Gospels.
I would disagree with that, but okay.
Have you read them?
I've read. You're talking about like Homer's work, for
Well,
example.
Homer was Greek. He came way before the Romans, and he's doing something completely different. But if you've read like the Iliad and the Odyssey, it's the same thing.
Right.
I'd say
Yeah.
that's more mythology than history.
Yeah, and I would say that they're in terms of genres of literature, not you couldn't compare the Gospels and the Book of Acts to, say, the Iliad or the Odyssey.
No, I think the Iliad and the Odyssey, I think it's questionable on whether or not Homer thought that they were completely true stories or if he was writing mythology. But I'm talking about the Roman writings, the ones that are contemporaneous to the biblical writings.
Mm-hmm.
In those
Mm-hmm.
writings, they're doing the exact same thing that the gospel is doing. So what I'm saying is rather than saying all of these Roman mythological histories, they're just all wrong and we need to accept the biblical one. I'm saying no, I reject all of them. They're all saying the same type of nonsense. All of them are doing the same weird like here's something that happened in history, but also here's like this deified
Mm-hmm.
god man. I'm saying no, I don't believe any of this nonsense.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. I'm just, I'm trying to understand how you even know what is true. Like, where is your in your view of how to acquire knowledge? Because you believe in history, right? You're
Mhm.
talking about historical things. How do you know what is true and what's not true, or do you just kind of don't know?
Well, true is that which is in accordance with the reality, right? So we have to observe the reality around us. So when someone makes a claim and it's not in alignment with reality, we would just say, well, it's not true.
But you'd agree that history you weren't there, right? So
Nobody
history
can
by
know.
definition, you can't say that, hey, that historical event happened or didn't. But I would assume you'd say, Washington crossed the Delaware, right? For example, you'd say that's true.
I don't know if it is. What I'm saying is, I don't know that you can say anything in history happened the way that it was written. Because, like, if you just compare, like, the individual war annals, if you compare the war annals of the Egyptians, when Pharaoh Necho went to war up in Megiddo or Carchemish, when Pharaoh Necho, when the Egyptians write about them going to war against the Babylonians and the Israelites, well, you read the writings of the Egyptians, you read the writings of the Babylonians, and you read the writings of the Jews, and they all differ. Isn't that weird how they all differ? So, was there a war? Yeah, absolutely. Do I believe like the
But how can you say
individual
that?
spin on the
How, how,
war?
how can you
No.
how can you actually say that though? Then,
Say what?
right? Okay, like, how do you know that George Washington crossed the Delaware?
I have literally no idea if he did. I'm saying that when we have three different people groups and they all say we went to war at this location, I'm okay admitting, I'm okay saying, yeah, these fuckers probably went to war. They have no reason to lie about it. All three people groups wrote about it. Now, what I don't believe is all the stuff that appears to be manufactured to make their people group sound better. So the Jews wrote about these wars to make them sound better. The Egyptians wrote about these wars to make them sound better. The Babylonians did the same thing. I'm saying, listen, the spin I don't accept. I will accept the fact that these three people groups went to war.
And the context, though, where you're saying, hey, this is manufactured, you're saying it's manufactured, but could something which you believe to be manufactured actually be true in accordance with reality, right?
Do you think that the when the king of Babylon breached the wall of Jerusalem, that the people fell backwards because of the splendor and majesty of the king of Babylon?
I want to hear what your point is there.
Do you think that happened?
I believe everything in the biblical text is true.
I didn't ask you if the Bible said it. I said, do you believe that when the king of Babylon breached the wall of Jerusalem, that the army of the enemies of Babylon all fell backwards because they saw the radiance and the glory of the king of Babylon?
Is it in the scriptures?
I, I'm not telling you. Do you believe it?
If it's in the scriptures, I believe it.
See, this is the problem. Your starting point is I believe it because it's in my book. Your starting point should be I believe it if it's true. And we
I,
determine if it's true by observing whether or not it matches what we expect reality to be. I don't know why you would expect an army to fall backwards because a particular king showed up when they breached the wall of the city and his radiance exuded from his body and scared everybody. Why would you believe that?
I mean, that's probably the same way that you could believe that the scientific impossibility that life came from non-life.
That's not a scientific impossibility, and I will not let you pivot.
Well, I'm just saying you're saying, hey, you can't believe in this
This is
miracle
a this is a crazy
because
pivot. I'm getting whiplash over here. I had said
okay,
nothing about a miracle. Just so you know, David, that's not in the Bible. That's a claim made by the Babylonian king. If I remember correctly, it was Sennacherib. So what I'm saying is, yes, the Babylonians went to war against Judea and they breached the wall. No, it's ridiculous to believe that when the Babylonian king breached the wall of Jerusalem, that the entire army fell backwards because of his glorious radiance. That's crazy. What I'm saying is, when I read the same crazy stuff in the Bible, I say, yeah, that's the same crazy stuff. I don't believe that either. The difference between you and me is I'm willing to use the same judgment for the Bible that I would use for other books, and you can't do that.
no, you're right. I can't do that. It's not possible.
Right, because your starting point is it's true and it can't be wrong. And this was the same thing that somebody told me when I was a Christian, when I was out on the internet back before social media, having discussions with atheists. I had a very good friend who's an atheist that said this. So, Justin, your starting point is that the Bible has to be true, and it's up to me to prove it wrong. Have you actually tried going through the Bible from the beginning and saying, can you actually prove it to be right, or do you only demand that it has to be right? So I went through that summer, read the entire Bible from front to back, and I asked myself with every chapter, can I prove this to be right, or do I just believe it to be right because I'm already a Christian? And it turned out I was doing the same thing you're doing now, Dave. I was only accepting it because it was part of my religion. It was part of the thing I already believed. I couldn't prove any of it to be true.
But history is as such. You can't prove history to be true or not if you were not there. Like I can't right, you couldn't say any more than I could, hey, here's definitive evidence in front of you that the world was created. Well, I don't know what your belief is on, like, say, the origin of life, but we weren't there. And so therefore we could never make a historical claim outside of some knowledge. And I would say that there is divine knowledge and also logical, reasonable evidence that God created life, because life does not come from non-life. Okay, no,
No, that's
just hear me
wrong.
out.
Life literally does come from non-life. In fact, you're made of non-life right now. Every atom in your body is technically not alive.
So when has life ever come from non-life?
Always. It's only done that. That's all it's ever done. In fact, we see it happening even in outer space. We find on two different meteors recently, we found uh, self-assembling amino acids and a protein on each of them.
So your view is that uh I mean I don't want to oversimplify it, but your view is that carbon became sentient.
Yeah.
Okay, and how does that happen?
Have you never read evolution? Do you know how this works?
No, I mean, I understand
Well, I know one
the
thing.
origin.
It wasn't a
I
magic man
understand.
in the sky
How do you know that?
because evolution has evidence. The magic man has none. So
Really? So
evolution
what
has
evidence
an entire
would you
body of
have
evidence,
of?
and I think the best evidence that we evolved from lower life forms is the DNA evidence. In the DNA
Okay, I'm
evidence, we have very strong evidence that we were in fact from a common ancestor with the great ape family, which is why we're classified as apes. So, do you know what an endogenous retrovirus is?
no, I don't. But I have a
Okay.
question. How can you say that is true when we don't have any evidence of life coming from non-life?
We do. I'll explain it to you. Okay, so endogenous retroviruses, I'm going to show you a picture. See if I can grab a good one.
Hey, while you're looking at that up, you like a savant, man? You got like a ridiculous memory.
Um, I don't know if I classify myself as a savant, but as it turns out, um, for some reason, I do have a gift of being able to read stuff and remember what I read. I don't remember shit that I hear. I have like
Hmm.
one skill, and my one skill is to remember stuff that I read. That's about it.
It's
So
a good
that
skill.
it's not a bad one. It's one of the reasons why, like when I was reading the Bible, it was so easy to find all the plot holes and inconsistencies because I remembered the stuff that I had already read. I was like, oh well, that contradicts that other thing that was already there. So let me grab. I'm going to show you a diagram real quick of an endogenous retrovirus. Let's see if this one's helpful.
I just want to say I know that I appreciate you and I appreciate this conversation. You're helping me, and no, I wanted to let you know that. Like I appreciate the conversation and
No, I think you.
entertaining it with me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think you've been quite cordial. I've got no complaints about the call so far. I think we're having a good time. So I'm going to show you a picture if it'll ever load. I don't know why it's taking a lifetime to load. There we go. All right. So this is like a generic picture of an endogenous retrovirus, and the basic explanation here is that this little snippet in orange. I forgot. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's small, but I see red, yellow
Yeah.
DNA looking structure and red,
Okay.
yellow, green blocks there.
Yeah, yeah. So the red structure in the DNA snippet is foreign DNA. They're calling it viral DNA, and the rest is like the host DNA. So what happens is like sometimes when foreign viruses get into the body, they'll actually insert DNA into our human DNA, and you can typically know where they show up because they leave indicators. So like where the foreign DNA and the host DNA meet, there'd be like a little bit of pinch of scarring. You can identify the beginning and the end by the scarring. And we've done tons of studies causing retroviruses on purpose just so we can study them. Now, here's the fun thing about retroviruses, right? When we look at the human genome, now that we've mapped the human genome, what we discover is that because retroviruses make it into our DNA, make it into our genome, they get passed on to our children. Now, the human species has at a minimum like 200 plus retroviruses that all humans have, every one of them. So living today, obviously. So what that means is that all of us had a common ancestor who had that retrovirus. Now, the interesting thing is about 80%, unless we find more of them, about 80% of the retroviruses that humans have, we also share with the great apes, which means we had to share DNA with the great apes because there's no way for them to have those retroviruses. The fun thing about retroviruses is that they show up in the same segment of the DNA every time. So, for example, let's imagine that the segment is ABCD, retrovirus,
Mhm.
EFG, right? It shows up that way every time, everywhere. And then we find the same thing in the great apes. So the fun thing about the retroviruses, most of them, almost all of them that we share with the great apes, they don't show up anywhere in the animal kingdom ever. They don't exist outside of humans and great apes, which is why it's the best evidence, in my view, that we evolved from lower, I won't say lower life forms, but we'll say less intelligent life forms, a common ancestor with the apes.
Okay, you know, it's hard for me to arrive at a place where we say that sentient human level intelligence came from non-life.
Why?
I think that's it's a great leap because it's never happened before.
No, it did.
And
We're
so,
doing it right now. We are it. Like saying it never happened before is just saying like we're going to ignore all the evidence that we are the example of it.
like, how do rocks become living?
They don't. Rocks aren't living.
Okay, so where did the first life form come from?
From outer space. So the water
No, no,
and other
not locationally, like actually, like how was the first life form created?
abiogenesis. So the theory of abiogenesis is that all you need is the right mixture of like what's the word, a prebiotic life. And then you need like an energy source, so like thermal vents, electricity. There's a million ways you can do it. We've got experiments demonstrating this. The Urey Miller experiment was the first one. It's been duplicated since. You can literally go out and watch people like scientists on the internet reproducing the experiment, showing that you can actually induce. Now, abiogenesis and the Urey Miller experiment aren't identical, right? One is showing how you can cause, reproducible material, and one, like abiogenesis, is how does it become what we would call life. The Urey Miller experiment isn't quite abiogenesis. But that being said, we've got a lot of examples of that, and we've even done synthetic first living cells as well, where we've taken the building blocks of what are believed the very first living cells, and then we put them together and then see if they would reproduce and live, and they did. They're called synthetic living cells. So like all what we know from science is that like we just have to combine the right materials, and they will in fact reproduce and consume energy from the environment. And then you give it a couple billion years of evolution, and bada bing bada boom. I don't think people appreciate how long a billion years is.
Yeah, I mean, I I hear you, but that's just never been proven to be true. That's why it's called a theory, right? That you
No.
can't say that after 100 billion years or trillions of years that carbon is just going to become sentient.
Why could it not? Is it the
Well,
argument you're
you know,
providing is
I
typically
agree.
called the
I
argument
agree
from
that it.
incredulity, right? So I'm saying the evidence that we have demonstrates that it is possible. Now, you're saying it's not possible, but you're not providing an argument. You're just saying it can't be possible. Like, is there
No,
an argument why it can't be possible?
I would say that it's a miracle.
No, but I'm asking for an argument why it's not possible.
Why it's not possible that non-life can become life.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I believe that it is possible. I think it's only possible through God,
I'm
right?
asking for an argument, right? Like, first of all, you'd have to demonstrate that your God exists before you postulate that he's the cause of anything, right? I'm asking you, based from a scientific perspective, is there a reason why, in fact, we couldn't get sentient life from chemicals?
I don't see how the science would ever lead you to believe that that's possible.
What science? What science would contradict it?
Well, for example, I don't see how you could have DNA. Like obviously, like I'm sure you actually know much better than I do. DNA, the complexity of that structure
Mhm.
is so insanely complex.
It
I
is
don't see
now.
how. Right, I don't see how you take carbon and you input as carbon and output as DNA. How does
That's
that
not what
happen?
life is. Life isn't carbon. I don't know why
Okay,
you have
carbon.
this idea.
Just I thought most life forms were carbon-based life, right?
Yeah, but you need hydrogen, oxygen, protein. Like there's lots of stuff that goes into like a cell. It's not just carbon.
Yeah, sure.
You need amino acids, fatty acids, lipids. Like there's lots of stuff that goes into a cell.
And I don't understand how you can arrive at that output of we are like the sentience of a human intelligence from nothing, from no life.
I'm asking why you can't do it. What's the holdup? Why can't it happen?
How is the burden of proof on me to say that that's possible? That doesn't seem logically possible.
What's illogical about it?
I mean, from the same, I would say it's as illogically possible as me teleporting to you right now.
Yeah, but
Like
what's
how
illogical about it?
about about that situation?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. It seems ludicrous to me.
Right. That's why it's an argument from incredulity, which is a logical fallacy. An
That
argument
doesn't
from
mean that it's false
incredulity
though.
just means I don't know how it could happen, therefore it couldn't have happened. But that's not a like a valid argument. Like I've got lots of arguments that demonstrate that the God you believe in could not exist, but you don't have any arguments against my worldview.
Oh, sure I do.
I don't think you do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just what is your okay? Let me understand your worldview first. What is your worldview? Why are we here? Where did we come from? And what are we doing here?
We don't have a purpose. Purpose is given by ourselves. I decide what my purpose is. We don't have a reason for being here. The universe is both eternal and chaotic.
Okay, and do you believe in right and wrong, good and evil?
No, right and wrong, good or evil are subjective words. We decide what those words mean. And I've never, not even once, ever heard someone come close to providing an argument for why objective morals exist.
Okay, so is rape objectively wrong?
I just told you objective morals don't exist.
Okay, so is rape objectively wrong?
I just told you rape is an irrelevant question if you're asking if it's objectively moral, because objective morals don't exist.
Okay, is rape wrong
I'll try this again.
to you?
Objective
To you?
morals don't exist.
Okay, so subjectively, is rape wrong to you?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's my subjective opinion.
Yeah, but you have to substantiate that, right? You have an opinion for a reason.
Because it causes
Right?
harm.
Okay, why is that bad?
Because it's subjectively something we all agree on is bad. Do you want to be harmed?
I don't want to be harmed.
No, neither
I
do
don't
I.
think-
And it turns out as a society, we agree we don't want to be harmed either, right? So the reality is you can say, I don't like subjective morality. I don't like it. I can't pound my fist and say that something's definitively wrong. I get it that you don't like it, but that's not an argument for objective morals existing. You still have to substantiate that objective morals do exist. And I don't think you can.
You just said that it's wrong because society has agreed that it's bad to do harm to people.
I didn't say that.
Okay, so why? Okay, let's try again.
So, Dave,
Yeah.
I want to make sure you're very clear on how objective versus subjective morals work, right? If there are no objective morals, then by default, all morals are subjective. Do you agree?
If there are no objective morals, then all morals are subjective.
Yep.
That's your statement.
Do you agree with that?
I mean, I think it. Like, do I agree with that? Like definition?
Yeah.
I'd have to think about that. Maybe I don't.
I mean,
know.
what else could they be?
I honestly, I don't believe in subjective morality. I just don't think it's the logical conclusion to say.
I didn't ask you if you did. I said if they're not objective, what else could they be?
Okay, I'll bite. Yeah, sure. They're all subjective if they're not objective. Okay, let's say that.
Okay. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is there any evidence for morals being objective? Because I don't see any. If I saw some, I would be an objectivist.
Okay, I believe that moral truth, moral right and wrong, transcend cultures, time, people, and whatever we think. So 2 + 2 is 4, whether anyone believes it or not, right? It's a logical
Math and
truth.
morals aren't the same thing, Dave.
And I agree. So what
Right.
I'm saying
So
is rape
I'm asking for the argument that objective morals exist.
Rape would be wrong, no matter what I think about it or anyone else thinks about it.
I know you believe that, but I'm not asking for what you believe. I'm asking for an argument that ends in morals being objective.
That rape is objectively wrong.
Yeah, I know you believe that. I'm asking for an argument that ends in that.
Okay, so I believe that those moral truths that you could say that murder is wrong, rape is wrong, are as true as 2 + 2 being 4. What is the?
No,
how do you know that 2
I know
+ 2 is
you,
4?
Dave. I know you believe that. I'm asking for the evidence of it, right? So here's where. I'm sorry, I put the wrong thing on the screen. I'm going to put something on the screen for you. Here's where we're at so far in the conversation, right? You've got your conclusion, right? Your conclusion is that morals are objective. Now, what we're missing from that conclusion is a premise or an argument for that conclusion. That's what we need, right? So this
God
is like
exists. God exists. That's my premise.
that's the non sequitur. Because if God exists, it doesn't have anything to say with whether or not morals are objective, and you can't prove that God exists in the first place. In fact, in your worldview, if your God exists, then you don't believe in objective morals either. You believe in subjective morals. It's just that they're subject to the mind of God.
Well, they're objective to humans. They're
That's
subjective to. So
that's not what subjective means. Or that's not what objective means, right? So if they're subject to any mind, even the mind of God, that means they're subjective. Now, you can say they're subject to God, but that they're still not objective.
they are subject to God and objective to people.
That's not how objective works. Objective means without
Well, then
anybody's mind involved.
give me the right word there.
Uh, ob- so you believe in divine command theory, right? So if they're objective, that means without needing a mind. They're absent of mind. It doesn't matter what your mind, will, and emotion say. It doesn't matter what anyone's mind, will, and emotion say. They are true, independent of any mind. Now, your God has a mind, and your God tells you what moral is, which means if your God is the arbiter of morals, you believe in subjective morals, not objective morals. You just think that they're subject to the mind of God rather than to the mind of humans.
You could label that. You could label it that way. That's fine with me.
Okay. So you don't believe in objective morals, you believe in divine command theory, right?
I
Which
believe
means
in from the mind of a human. They are objective.
that's not what objective means.
Okay, well, you're not giving me the right. I don't know the right word here
They're
of what you were.
subjective.
No, because it's not subjective to me, right? You
They,
and
but okay,
if
so
so.
Dave, do you
Wait,
know
wait.
what
Can we just
do you know what the word subjective means?
that it's this your truth, my truth. It's you have your own belief of what the reason we're here, right? I have my own belief. They can coexist. There isn't some truth
Okay.
that is anchored on, right? So
Dave,
there's not an ontological moral truth.
subjective means that it's based or grounded in a mind, right? And if morals are grounded in your God's mind, then you believe in subjective morals, but you believe that they come from God.
I see what you're saying, but to call me a subjective moralist is like that's not what you would call someone that's subjectively moral.
You would, yeah. If morals are subject to a mind, and that is God's mind, you believe in subjective morals. If morals were objective, it wouldn't matter what was in God's mind; they would just be objective.
All right. Well, I feel like we're kind of getting off the road here a little
Okay,
bit.
so
Here's the issue I'm seeing is that like if you said, "Hey, you have subjective morality," you wouldn't normally be saying that to someone who's saying, "Hey, I believe that God is the arbiter of truth and morality." You wouldn't normally classify someone that says that as like, "Hey, you're a subjective moralist."
yeah, I'm specifically doing it with you, Dave, because you don't think that you're a subjective moralist, but you are. You believe in the subjective morals of God. And I'm going to explain to you why that's dangerous, right? Because your form of subjective morals means that you believe in divine command theory, which means everything God commands you to do is thereby justified, right? Like if God
Everything that
tells you to do it, then it must be good to do it.
if it was truly God, yes.
Exactly. So if it was truly God, then it's always a good thing to do. So like when God gives laws, he can't give bad laws. All of his laws by definition are good, right?
Yes.
Right, because if it comes from God, it has to be good unless he's fooling you, right? But this falls apart as soon as you start reading like God's commands. For example, if you go to Deuteronomy 22, he says, suppose a man marries a woman, but after going into her, dislikes her and makes up charges against her, slandering her by saying, I married this woman, but when I lay with her, I did not find evidence of her virginity. The father of the young woman and her mother shall then submit the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate. Okay. So far, what it's saying here is if there's a guy and he marries a woman, goes into her, right? He sleeps with her, and he doesn't find the evidence of her virginity, namely the bleeding. He's like, hey, we got a problem here. Let's go to court. We got an agreement so far?
Okay.
Okay. Now, what happens is if they end up in court because he's charging her with not being a virgin, says, the father of the young woman shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. And now he's made up charges against her, saying, I did not find evidence of your daughter's virginity. But here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. Then they shall spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. The elders of that town shall take the man and punish him. So he's saying, listen, if it turns out that that the cloth has blood on it, he's in trouble, right? 'Cause now he's making up false charges against a woman. But it says, if, however, this charge is true, that evidence of the young woman's virginity was not found, then they shall bring the young woman out to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of her town shall stone her to death, because she committed a disgraceful act in Israel by prostituting herself in her father's house. So you shall purge the evil from among you, right? So in this command, you would have to assume then that in fact it's good to kill women that aren't virgins on their wedding night.
Are you saying that this is bad?
I think it's bad
Okay. Well, how do you come to that conclusion?
because it causes harm. I told you. I believe in subjective morals, and my subjective morals, which are formed by my upbringing, my observation, and society at large, tells me that we shouldn't kill women if they don't bleed. Do you think we should?
But why is harm bad in your worldview?
It's almost like you don't want to answer my questions. Do you think it's bad to kill women if they don't bleed on their wedding night?
I'm asking a different question
I
here.
know, yes, you're avoiding my question. I know. Do you think it's bad to kill women if they don't bleed on their wedding night?
Okay, so I don't know about this exact passage, but I will say that I do know of some scriptures where that Moses is giving this law, correct?
Yeah. Hmm.
So like Christ would say, "Hey, Moses gave you that law because you were hard of heart," right? And in regards to divorce,
Yeah.
Jesus said that. Okay,
But
so
so you're just going to apply that to every law of Moses you don't like?
no, but I think there's good textual evidence that some of the
Dave, I just
the
want to let you
Torah.
know, I already know this talking point, and if you keep going down this road, it's not going to end well.
That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Go ahead if you feel like you must.
Okay, is all of the Torah applied for all time? And the
Uh,
answer is no.
Yeah, it is according to God. Yeah, he says to follow the
Okay.
law forever, and he even says in the era where he circumcises the heart of the people that they're going to follow this law that he's given them today. That's
Yeah. And
Deuteronomy
so
30.
okay, okay, and you'd have to define what law is there, right?
The law that he's giving on this day. All the laws in Deuteronomy were given on one day when Moses sat on the foot of the mountain and instructed the Israelites before they went into the promised land.
Okay. So there is ceremonial law. There's moral code, right?
It's like
There's
you didn't hear what I
Leviticus.
said. You want me to read you Deuteronomy 30?
Go ahead. Yeah, you
Also,
can do
keep
that.
in mind, even if this was temporary, it doesn't fix it. You want to know why it doesn't fix it? Because
What's
not
that?
all women bleed their first time. Only about 43% of them do. But the ancient goat herders who wrote this book and pretended to be talking for God didn't know that. So they said if a woman doesn't bleed on her wedding night, you can stone her because they didn't know any better, which means most of the women, if not all of them getting stoned, were actually innocent.
I don't see how that's a problem in your worldview.
It's a problem in your worldview. It's a problem in mine too, by the way. So in my worldview, I don't think we should be executing women who don't bleed. In my worldview, I believe in justice. In your world, you don't believe in justice. In fact,
Oh,
your
I
God
do. Absolutely
explicitly
believe in
tells
justice.
you that he doesn't believe in justice.
That
So
that's okay. Wait. Tell me how that is a very big claim. I want to hear
we'll
why.
get there next, David. So it says in Deuteronomy 30 of the period where he circumcises the heart of the people. You've read about this in Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Says the Lord God will bring you into the land that your ancestors possessed, and you will possess it, and he will make you prosperous and numerous more than your ancestors. In fact, he'll make you more prosperous and numerous than your ancestors. So this is the gathering when he gathers all the people, right?
Uh-huh.
And he
Hmm.
says, moreover, the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your descendants, so that you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, that you may live. This is obviously the new covenant era. The Lord your God will put these curses on your enemies and on the adversaries who took advantage of you. Then you shall again obey the Lord, observing all of his commandments that I am commanding you today.
Okay.
So that means
Exodus 20.
during the New Testament
Exodus
era,
20.
Well, hold on. We're in Deuteronomy 30. He's saying during the New Testament era, when I circumcise your hearts, you are, well, the New Covenant era, sorry. When I circumcise your hearts, you're going to be following all of these laws. Now, what do you want to know about Exodus 20?
No, I'm saying that you were talking about the commandments here, right? And so the Deuteronomy is a retelling, right? This the second.
It's the second telling of the law. Yep.
Okay, and I would say that there's the text you just read is referring to the Ten Commandments, the moral law
It's not.
that was given in Exodus 20.
No, we'll try this again. He says, the Lord your God will, I'm sorry, then you shall again obey the Lord, observing all of his commandments that I'm commanding you today. That includes Deuteronomy 22. All of those commands came in that day.
Okay, so when we talk about the Ten Commandments and the law that was written on the tablets, you don't think that the law written on the tablets was unique?
He said all. There's no exception to the word all. When he says
Right.
you're going to observe all of his commandments I'm commanding you today, that means all of the commandments that he's commanding them that day, which includes Deuteronomy 22.
Okay, so that doesn't actually answer what we're talking about here, though, because
But
what I'm saying
so,
is that there's ceremonial law.
Dave, do you remember why I read this to you? I read this to you to demonstrate that there's no intention of the God who gave these laws to get rid of them. There's no intention to do that.
And I'm not saying that there's intention to get rid of them. I'm saying that there are things like circumcision, which later did not become required for Gentiles for a reason.
Wrong. Ezekiel and Yahweh disagree with you. Ezekiel 44:9 literally says that during the new heaven, new earth, new Jerusalem, that the foreigners who worship with Israel must be circumcised.
Okay, that's a future right. I'm talking about the Gentiles, New Testament Gentiles in the time of Christ.
So you think we shouldn't get circumcised now, but when we go to heaven, we got to get circumcised?
I don't know how it'll work, but what I'm telling you is that the text is clear that circumcision was not for the Gentiles
Paul
required.
is clear about that. Jesus disagrees. Jesus says to follow the law until heaven and earth pass away. Paul, that maniac, disagrees with Jesus. Jesus says, I did not come to abolish the law. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 2, 14 and 15, that he did abolish the law. They contradict each other. And Paul contradicts Yahweh. This is what I keep trying to tell you. I don't care what Paul says. Yahweh, the guy who gave the command in Deuteronomy 22, said that you're going to follow this law all the time. He says the same thing in Deuteronomy 12, Deuteronomy 11, over and over. And he tells you, do this thing forever.
The issue with that interpretation, though, is that you're saying that like there isn't laws that were just for the Levitical priesthood and for the people of Israel, which there were.
No one says there weren't individual laws for the priests. Remember, we're still talking about Deuteronomy 22 when God says you can kill the women who don't bleed. The question is, does it still apply? And the reality is, according to the Old Testament, yes, it very much does. According to Jesus, yes, it does. Deuteronomy 12 says, these are the statutes and ordinances that you must diligently observe in the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, have given you to occupy all the days that you live on the earth. Every day that you're living on this earth is a day to follow these commands.
Right. And the Orthodox Christian view would be that those were civil laws given to the Israelites, not for all men of all time. That's the Orthodox Christian view.
They would be wrong because in the Old Testament, it says in the prophets that the Israelites and the foreigners will join together. In fact, even in Isaiah 56, literally says that the foreigners will make sacrifices on the physical altar of Yahweh in the temple. Same thing with Ezekiel. Ezekiel says the same thing. 44, 45, 46. Foreigners will come and dwell with Israel and give offering and sacrifices, bulls, rams, lambs, libations inside the temple.
Okay. What you're saying, I'm not saying that God is abolishing laws. I'm saying he has certain laws for time and place and people, including the Levites and including civil Israel.
And he says, do them forever. And then he says, the foreigners will join you.
Right. But how could the Israelites do them forever?
How could they
How could
not?
they? Well, because Israel was a theocracy, right? You know,
Hmm.
they were there for a time.
Hmm.
How could they
Is
do them
there anything
forever?
preventing somebody from stoning a woman who doesn't bleed?
Yeah, that we're not. I'm not in civil Israel,
We're still
right?
talking about that. This is a moral precept. God says, "You must purge the evil from among you. If a woman is found to not be a virgin because she didn't bleed, you need to stone her." Just so we're aware, Dave, this is not a good command, whether it was temporary or permanent. Nothing you're doing now helps this. Because all that means is for about 2,000 years, God said you can kill innocent women. Nothing you're doing here is going to fix this.
How? Okay, wait. So how is that saying that?
If you think
It
that Jesus abolished the laws according to Paul, then all you're saying is that for 1,500 years or more, about 1,500 years, God was okay with killing innocent women. Do you think God was okay with killing innocent women?
does the text say that though?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Because we
It says,
know for a fact that ancient women didn't always bleed if they were virgins, but it says if she doesn't bleed, you can kill her.
let's say that that was given by divine authority, and that let's just say that for the sake of argument, that there was actually injustice there. It
There
wasn't
is.
something where you're saying like, no, it's not something where you're saying, oh hey, that actually didn't happen like that. There was people that were innocent that got executed.
Dave, this is the tip of the iceberg. If you can't handle Deuteronomy 22, you're not going to like where we're going next.
I'm fine with it. I mean, God can say what He wants to say about civil Israel and them executing judgment. They had a prophet among them who was the spokesperson for God.
Yeah, but do you believe that it's okay to execute women on faulty evidence?
No,
Okay. The God of the book does.
I don't. I don't see that in the text.
Oh, so we'll try this again. I don't. Maybe I didn't read it slow enough. Okay. So in the text, it literally says in verse 13, suppose a man marries a woman, but after going into her, that means if he dislikes her and makes up charges against her by slandering her and saying, I married this woman, but when I lay with her, I did not find evidence of her virginity, he's saying she didn't bleed, correct?
Okay.
Okay. Now, if he does that, if he goes to bed with her and she does not bleed, they end up in court. And then the
Yep.
father says, hey, here's a situation, but here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. Then they will spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. Now, the cloth is the evidence, the blood is the evidence, but less than half of women bleed their first time. Less than half. In fact, if you're a woman right now watching this, put a one in the comments. If you didn't bleed your first time, you're going to see a fucking flood of ones because not every woman bleeds the same way. In fact, some people don't bleed until the second, third, or fourth time. Some of them never bleed their first time. Women aren't a monolith. There's not one hymen, there's not one vagina. As it turns out, women are diverse, and ancient people didn't know this, which means if a woman was taken to court because she didn't bleed on a sheet, the sheet is not good evidence of whether or not she's guilty of being a virgin. You cannot tell if a woman is a virgin based on whether or not she bled.
Let's just say that at that time, that when that happened, it was definitive proof.
It wasn't, though.
No, but according to what you're saying, but you weren't there.
We have ancient people who wrote about it. The ancient Greeks wrote about it. The ancient Jews eventually figured it out and they wrote about it. We know that ancient women didn't bleed their first time. They told us stories about how that was the case.
Maybe that wasn't true for the Israelite woman.
So they had special hymens.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. So they had special hymens until Jesus came. Then God fucked up their hymens.
I'm not sure what you're saying there.
Do you think God changed their hymens when Jesus came?
I'm saying that God's precepts are righteous, And
They're totally not.
well, you're trying
Killing
to
a
arrive there.
killing a woman on faulty evidence is not righteous. And he tells you he's not righteous. Exodus 34:7, he declares it to you. He literally tells you that he's not righteous. He says, visiting the iniquity of the parents upon the children and the children's children into the third and the fourth generation. That's not righteousness. You don't punish grandchildren for the sins of their parents.
Okay, let's read that full part, not just one verse.
Keeping steadfast love for 1,000 generations, forgiving
iniquity and transgression and sin.
It's almost like you didn't
Yet
listen.
by no means
Forgiving
clearing the
iniquity
guilty.
and sin, yet by no means clearing the guilty, but visiting the iniquity of the parents upon the children.
Okay, so here's where you're arriving at there. It's different than where I'm arriving at. My assumption, based on the biblical text, is that all men are sinners and need grace and forgiveness.
I need you to address the text we're reading. The one
That's
we're
what I'm. No, that's what
reading
I'm.
says that God visits the iniquity of the parents upon the children and the children's children into the third or fourth generation. And then we've got lots of instances in the Bible where he does that. Do you want to see where he does that?
No, because here's the thing. That
You do
doesn't
know he
matter.
does, right?
Yeah, I do. I
Okay.
do. And you know
Do you
what?
think it's okay to punish grandchildren for the crimes of their grandparents?
If they're guilty of transgression,
I
God
didn't
can do
ask
whatever
that.
He
I
wants
said, do you
to.
think it's okay to punish grandchildren for the crimes of their grandparents?
If they are guilty of
I
transgression,
didn't ask that.
yes.
I said, is it okay to punish grandchildren for the crimes of their grandparents, not for their crimes, the crimes of their grandparents?
Okay, but you have to qualify that statement.
I don't have to qualify anything. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Listen carefully. Is it okay to punish a grandchild for the crime that their grandparents committed? Is that okay?
No, if
Thank
they are
you. It's
innocent.
not okay.
No, if they are innocent.
Innocent of what?
Sin.
Okay, so if my grandparents committed a crime, it's okay for me to be punished for it.
Are you a sinner?
Everyone is in your worldview, Dave.
No, I mean, I'm asking you, are you a sinner?
Everybody is a sinner in your worldview. So do you
Well,
think it's okay in the world we live in for me to go to prison for a crime my grandparents committed? Do you think that's okay?
If you are guilty and not innocent, then yes.
Guilty of what?
Sin.
I'm not guilty of the crime they committed, Dave. That's the problem. If I'm not guilty of the crime being punished, I shouldn't receive the punishment. That's what it means to be just. You get punished for the crimes you do make. You don't get punished for the crimes somebody else made. That's the definition of justice.
Okay.
So
But
God's
here's the
not
thing.
just because I'll show you another one. He punishes in Deuteronomy 23. Those born of an illicit union shall not come into the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. None of their descendants shall come into the assembly of the Lord, which means if your parents had you out of wedlock, you were barred from joining the assembly of the Lord. What did you do? Why are you punished for that?
Because God can do whatever He wants with His
So
own temple.
he's not just. I didn't ask you if he can do what he wants. I asked if he's just. We're talking about the definition of justice, Dave. We're talking about justice. Your God is not a God of justice.
Okay, but hold on 1 second. Okay, just let me say something. Being let into God's temple is a grace. It is not a punishment to get thrown out of the temple. It is a grace to be ever in the temple.
But David, listen to the words. I'm not asking you if it's grace. I'm asking you why he's punishing people for things they didn't do. The child who's not allowed into the assembly of the Lord, it's not just the temple, it's the entire assembly, right? You can't do festivals, you can't do any ritual sacrifices, none of it. You can't do it. You're not allowed in the assembly, right? This happens because of what your parents or grandparents or great grandparents did. This is not a punishment for what you did. It's a punishment for what your ancestors did. Do you see the problem with punishing great grandchildren for the crimes of their ancestors? I think he lost his reception. He's coming back. Hold on. Welcome back. Can you hear me? Hey, Polly, good to see you, buddy. Dave, can you hear me, bud? Hello? Dave,
Got me?
I can hear you.
Sorry about that.
Right. So, again, God is willing to punish people for the crimes of others all the time. You want to see like the most egregious example of this? This is maybe my favorite example ever of God acting unjustly. It's in 2 Samuel 12. I don't know why I typed 24. So you know about David and the Bathsheba incident, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. And when David had Uriah the Hittite killed because he knocked up his wife, there
Yes.
was two punishments that were handed down. Do you remember either of the punishments?
His child died.
Yeah, exactly. His child died. He made his child sick for a full week. Then his child died. The second punishment was the wives get raped. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, I will raise up trouble against you from within your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor. He shall lie with your wives in broad daylight. You did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel in broad daylight." And then, if you fast forward to chapter 16, David goes on the run because his son Absalom raises up a coup and brings a military with him, chases him out of the palace, and then he takes the advice of Ahithophel and it says, "Listen, in order to prove that you're in charge now, you need to take David's wives, bring them up to the top of palace, and sleep with them in front of everybody to show that you're in charge now." So he does. He goes into the palace, takes 10 of David's wives up to the top of the palace, and sleeps with them. Do you think those wives deserved to take the punishment for David's sin?
I mean, here's the jump you're making that I don't buy, is that because God allowed it does not mean he authored it.
He caused it. We'll try this again. Verse 11, "I will raise up trouble against you from within your own house." He's saying, I'm doing it. He's taking the credit for it.
He's allowing it.
No, he said, I'm doing it.
Okay, so how is he doing it?
He's instigating it the same way he instigated David in chapter 24. He says, I will take your wives. And just like he does all the time, he's influencing people to do things. He influences people to do shit all the time in the Bible. This is not new. God's taking credit for it. He literally says, I will do this thing before all Israel. I will do it. He's taking the credit for him. You calling God a liar?
No, I'm saying something different, which is that God permitting something is different than him doing it himself.
We'll try this. Does he say, I'm doing it?
I mean,
can you not see the screen? Do you not see the verse?
I do. From the eyes of God or from the eyes of man?
No. The words of God, God's own words, is I will do it.
And what I'm saying is that did men rape those women?
A man raped those women because God caused it to happen.
And when you say God caused it to happen, how do you mean that?
He obviously hardened the heart of Absalom the same way he hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the same way he hardened the heart of the Canaanites, same way he hardened all kinds of people's hearts. He hardens people's hearts all the time to get them to do horrific stuff.
And my belief on this text is that those men were the ones sinning, not God.
God caused it. We'll try this again. This is a yes or no question. Does God take credit for what happened? In the passage, not in your mind, in the passage we're reading, does God take credit for it?
I mean, I don't see that word, so you're adding that a little bit, but...
Okay, I'll read it for the 15th time. He literally says, I will take your wives. When someone says, I will take your wives, what does that mean?
He will take your wives.
That means he's the one causing it. Thank you. When he says, I will do this thing, what does that mean?
He will do this thing.
The motherfucker, that's right. That means he's doing the thing. Listen, Dave, you're way too young and way too smart to not know how first person pronouns work.
See, the problem I have with this view, though, is you're not taking into account that men actually did those things.
I know, because God influenced them to do it. The same way
Okay,
he influenced Pharaoh to not let the people go. The same way he influenced the Canaanites in the book of Joshua to make war against Israel. The same way
right.
he influenced King Saul to do things that King Saul did. The same way he influenced Dog to kill the priest at Nob. God does this all the time.
And my view of that is that based on what I understand what I agree with what you're saying. God did harden the heart of Pharaoh. Yes, he
Did he
did.
harden the heart of Absalom?
Does it say that in the text?
It says he's causing it to happen. How do you think
Okay,
he caused it?
I mean, I don't know.
You realize this only works if this is a punishment by God. Just so you're aware.
So, like,
What we're hold on, Dave. What we're reading is a punishment for David. This is God said, "You did a bad, here's the punishment," right? And the punishment God takes credit for. He says, "I'm doing the thing." And now you're up here lying to my face, Dave. So we started this conversation, right, with this crazy presupposition that whatever is in this book just has to be true. And I said, I don't think that is the case, right? And now you're demonstrating why religion rots your brain, because now we're reading a passage where God clearly says, I'm doing something, and you're saying, no, God's not doing it. He says he's doing it.
and I'm saying there's nuances to that statement, and here's what I mean by that. So he says, "I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor." So, for example, could that be that those wives were being restrained from sinning and that they decided to go commit adultery?
They did not. They were taken by Absalom when he raided the palace. Do you think 10 of David's wives are dumb enough to sleep with their own stepson, literally on top of the palace in front of all Israel, knowing that the punishment for that is that they would be stoned? Do you think they're that dumb? This is like the what were they wearing? They had it coming. They
No,
enjoyed it. They wanted to be
I'm not
raped.
saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like how we arrived here. How do we even get here?
We got here by demonstrating that your God is not a God of justice. Your God allows and causes women to be raped for the crimes of their husband.
But see, here's what I'm trying to understand from you is we live in a society, and you're saying words like justice, but if morals are all relative to you, and you believe that rape is wrong for you, but it's not objectively wrong, then how can we even have an idea and say that hey, there's a right and
Here comes
wrong,
the
and there
pivot.
is justice?
He can't help himself. They really have no way of dealing with the text. They have to pivot to bad presuppositional moralist arguments. So again, Dave, the word justice is not subjective. It has an actual meaning, and what it means, the meaning of justice is that you get what you deserve, right? You don't deserve to be raped if you haven't committed the sin. The sin was committed by David. So if anyone gets punished other than David, that is not justice. This has nothing to do with me trying to defend the position that rape is bad, although I could. That has nothing to do with that. This is about the definition of just, and your God is not just.
God, because he makes laws and morals, cannot do evil.
He just did. It is evil.
No,
It is
no,
always evil. It is always evil to punish somebody for somebody else's crime. Always.
you're saying it like they are not guilty.
Guilty of what?
Sin.
Okay, so any woman on the face of the planet, because she's not sinless, deserves to be raped.
I didn't say that.
Did
I'm
these
saying
women
that
deserve to be raped? What was your
I'm saying
sin?
that I'm saying that God can
This is
judge.
this is why David, this religion has rotted your brain. When you think women deserve to be raped because their husband sinned and they're not perfect.
I didn't say that.
Okay, did they deserve to be raped or not?
If God says something,
Did they do something deserving of the crime,
I
of the
don't know
punishment?
what they did. I don't know what they did.
Okay, does the text tell you why they're getting raped?
It's saying why God is doing this
Does
thing,
the text
but
tell
it
you
does.
why they're getting raped?
See, I can't go to that conclusion with you though,
You
because
can.
I
It's a
no,
yes or
because
no, David. Does the text tell you why they're getting raped?
not fully, no.
Oh, it doesn't tell you why?
No.
So you're just gonna okay. I'm gonna take a deep breath. David, I'm gonna give you one last chance to not be a lying dirtbag. This is the last chance you get. The text does tell you why they're being raped. It's a punishment. He literally says, "Now therefore, the word of the Lord shall never depart from your house, for you have despised me and taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife." This is the punishment for what he did to Uriah. Thus saith the Lord, I will raise up trouble against you from within your house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in broad daylight. For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel in broad daylight. He tells you why it's happening. It's because of what David did. It's a punishment to David for what David did, and he takes credit for doing it. And you're getting up here and saying, golly gee, I don't know why it happened. Golly gee, I guess they did something to deserve it. David, this has rotted your brain. You've turned your brain off, and now you lack critical thinking skills because this religion has poisoned your mind.
I know that this is getting heated, but I just want you to hear me say this. I don't want this to devolve into a bad conversation. I've been enjoying the conversation with you.
I was having a good conversation until you started lying to my face, David.
Okay, so what did I lie about?
You told me on multiple occasions that God did not do the thing that he clearly said he did.
I'm saying something different than that. I'm saying that it's nuanced.
I
That
know it's nuanced. I
there's
know.
human
We
agency
know
involved in
humans did it. We know humans did it. I'm saying God caused it to happen because he said he's causing it to happen. The same way he caused the Israelites to go to war with the Canaanites. Joshua 11:20, for it was the Lord's doing to harden their hearts so that they would come against Israel in battle in order that they might be utterly destroyed. God influences people all the time to do stuff. In
Amen.
this case, he
True.
clearly
True.
influenced Absalom to do the thing he needed Absalom to do. That's why it's a punishment.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is the moment, David, where you get to be, I don't know how old you are. This is the moment where you get to have an adult epiphany and say, yes, this is one thing that means what it says, and it's not pretty. Your God's a monster, David.
That's not true.
It's 100% fact.
That's definitely not
Your
true.
God's a vicious monster if he causes women to be raped for the crimes of their husband.
I don't know what would like that. That's a very horrible statement, but
It's a true statement. There's no reality in which somebody rapes somebody for crimes that somebody else committed and they're not a monster. That's the reality you're living in right now, and you're unwilling to accept it.
the thing is, I'm not saying God isn't here in this example. Did God sovereignly allow for that thing to happen? Yes,
He
he
caused
did.
it.
Okay, let's just say, well, I'll use your words. It doesn't say that exactly, but I will
It
use those
does.
words. Okay, God sovereignly, it
It
says he
says
caused
that.
it.
He says, I will take your wives. I
Okay.
will do this thing. If God says something is going to happen and then he says, I'm doing the thing, that means he's the cause of it. That's what that means. David, I want this to be a good conversation, but it can't be until you stop lying to my face.
Can I just, I want to at least get to a point of agreement on this. God sovereignly did do this thing,
Yes, he did.
but
Thank you.
also men were free agents in this.
They were not free agents, just like the Amalekites and the other people were influenced by God. It says God hardened their heart so that they would go out in battle.
I mean,
God is causing people to do things. You have to take ownership for what this text does, Dave. The longer you beat around the bush, the longer you lie to our faces, the sillier it looks. There are like 2,000 people or more watching right now. You're coping poorly with the text that you
That's
know is
fine, man.
horrible.
Hey, that is fine. I'm trying to go as far as I possibly can here and say God was sovereign in this, and also there were free agents involved in this. Yes, was God a a mover in this, a sovereign mover? Yes, he was a sovereign mover.
It
But
can't be free will if he causes it.
okay, so because you were born and raised, do you have free will?
No, this can't be free will if he's causing it. He's acting against somebody's free will to make it happen. That's why it's a punishment. If David never did the sin with Bathsheba, this wouldn't have happened.
I'm not
You
sure
know
the
that's the
relevance
case.
of that.
If David
I'm not
did
sure the
not
relevance of that,
if
but
David
okay.
did not sleep with Bathsheba, if he did not have Uriah killed, this event would not have happened. Because this is
Okay.
a punishment for what he did. And if it's a punishment for the thing he did, that means God is causing it to happen. That's why it's a punishment.
Like, I get what you're saying here, but because God is sovereign and outside time and space,
You're trying so hard, Dave. Dave, the more you fight this, the sillier it looks.
I mean, I feel like I'm conceding your point here. God is sovereign in this.
He
Like,
is. He's
he
causing
is.
it to happen.
But there is men involved in this.
Oh, my live just got flagged for harassment on TikTok. Yeah,
That
whatever. I
wasn't
get
me,
flagged.
man.
That's not you.
That wasn't me.
I get flagged every TikTok stream. It doesn't matter what happens. The Christians get so up in arms on TikTok that they report me until I get flagged. That's why I stream on YouTube so much now, because I can't keep an active account on TikTok.
Well, hey, I want to go to at least to a spot of I know what you're saying here, and I see what you're saying, and I do concede the point that God is sovereign in this, but I will not go so far as to say that those people did not sin and have culpability of their own sin.
The women?
Both sides.
But the text doesn't say that. The text says that this is happening because of what David did.
Right, but
So the text lying?
the premise here is that they are innocent. It was what you're saying.
That they're innocent of the crime that David committed. Remember, no one's saying they're sinless. We're saying they're innocent of the crime they're being punished for.
And I'm saying that because they are sinful, God can do whatever he wants.
Okay, then means your God doesn't have justice. That means in
He
your
does.
worldview,
He does.
justice is arbitrary. It means
No.
God can punish anybody at any time for anyone else's sin, no matter how severe or how unsevere it is. That's not justice. Justice means the punishment is proportional to the crime. Justice means you get punished for the crime you committed, not the crime somebody else committed. Just because you're all powerful doesn't mean you can make up new rules of justice.
And I would agree with that, but I'm going so far as to just say that, hey, these people involved, no matter who you talk about in human history, regardless of this exact text or not, are sinful and are deserving of God's judgment.
Well, no one cares. So was King David, and he didn't kill King David. He didn't rape King David. If this was a fair punishment, David should have been raped, not his wives.
According to who?
According to the definition of justice. Again, the definition of just means the person gets punishment for the things they did.
Right, and I'm saying what they did was that everyone is guilty of sin.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Do you think a 13-year-old girl who has only committed one sin, the sin of lying to her mom about chewing gum in class, deserved to be raped like David's wives?
I believe that God is so holy and
But
just.
David, it's a yes or no question. She's a sinner. She's committed a sin. Does that mean she's deserving of rape?
I didn't say that.
So what sin does a person have to commit before God's willing to let you get raped?
I don't know that. You know that. I don't know that.
So you're the one saying that people aren't perfect, therefore they should be raped. I want to
No,
know, what
it is-
sins does a
I
person
didn't
have to
say that.
commit before God has them raped? What sin does it have to be?
Okay, but hold on. I didn't say, you put words in my mouth there. I didn't say that.
You're saying
What
it's
I-
okay that these
what I
women were
said
raped
is
because they
that-
were not sinless. That's what you said, David. Listen to your words.
No, I'll let me be clear. What I believe is that all men are sinners
I know.
and deserving of God's justice and wrath and deserve to go to hell,
Yeah,
except God gives
and,
grace.
and at what part does that include the raping?
At the part where God can do whatever he wants to
I
do
didn't ask
because
it. What sin do I need to commit before God is willing to rape me?
there is no answer to that. I
So
don't
it's
know.
just anything. It's just arbitrary.
No, it's not arbitrary. It's that
Well,
God is the
this
ruler of
is
that.
important. I need to know, Dave. I need to know what sin I can and cannot commit so I don't get raped by Yahweh. What sin do I have to
You shouldn't
avoid?
be worried about that. You should be worried about hell.
Well, I am worried about getting raped because he had 10 of David's wives raped. How do you not see this problem, Dave? Do you have sisters? Do you have a mother?
I'm more worried about people's eternity
I'm worried about your
than
mother right now, Dave. You think it's okay for God to have her raped?
no, that's not what I said.
Is your mother sinless?
Is my mother sinless? You know the answer to that.
She's not. So in your worldview, it's okay if God has your mother raped because she's not sinless.
Well,
That
like,
Dave, this
okay,
this is the bed you made. You have to lie in it now. You said it's okay for these women to be raped because they're not sinless. By the same consequence, it's okay for your mother to be raped because she's
no,
not
because
sinless.
you're applying this text outside of this
I'm not.
exact
I'm
experience.
using your logic. You've walked into this trap. You built your own trap and you walked into it. You're saying it's okay that God had these women raped because they're not completely free of sin, which by extension means any woman can be raped because they're not free of sin. So if
That's
your dad cheats on your
that's
mom and commits adultery, can God have your mother raped for your dad's sin?
God can do whatever he wants to
Yes or
do.
no, Dave?
I just said
Would it be just if your dad committed adultery? Would it be just for God to punish your dad by having your mother raped?
God knows. I don't know.
I'm asking you. I want to know what you think
I,
because you're the one making this case right now. So answer honestly. According to the worldview you're painting right now, would it be just for God to have your mother raped if your dad committed adultery?
there's one lawgiver who's able to
He
save and
can't,
to
he can't,
destroy.
he can't do it. All right. Well, Dave, I think we reached the logical extension of the conversation. You've demonstrated that religion has completely ruined your brain. You're probably a smart young man in real life. I'm sad that religion has done this to you, and that's why we do these live streams. But coming back some other time, I think we've gone on quite a bit, and I'm sure we'll have a good conversation on another topic.
I appreciate the call, man, and I hope you have a blessed day.
Cheers.